Hello, this is a presentation on the upcoming changes to Marine Order 504 that come into effect on the 1st of August 2023. The information presented here is taken from the Australian Maritime Safety Authority's WebHub material on the MO 504 changes that can be accessed at www.amsa.gov.au/Marine Order 504 Operational Safety Changes. The purpose of this presentation is to provide a recorded version of the workshop presentation that members of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority's liaison team are conducting online and at venues around Australia over the month of July 2023. Check the web hub at the aforementioned address for details. The changes that we are going to cover in today's recording are: life jacket wear must be addressed in the vessel's risk assessment and a written procedure developed. This includes vessels operating under the ISM Code Part A. We will look at risk assessment, including the appropriate crewing determination, and this must be accessible to the master, crew, and any enforcement personnel. And master and crew, if applicable, must be consulted when developing or reviewing. Crewing provisions. The minimum crewing requirements table has been simplified. Requirements for larger vessels are equal to or over 80 metres in length, greater to or over 3,000 gross tonne, or greater than or equal to 3,000 kilowatt propulsion power, are to have a crewing determination. The management of fatigue must be adequately addressed when determining risk-based crewing levels. We have also defined rest. Training and drills must be addressed in the vessel's safety management system, including the use of life-saving equipment. The designated person and direct reporting pathways for the escalation of issues by the designated person must be clear. A copy of the SMS must be kept on board if practical and with onshore personnel. And record keeping, we must ensure records of training and consultation on risk assessment are kept for a minimum of 5 years. In terms of risk assessment for life jacket wear, a risk assessment needs to identify when a life jacket must be worn by any person on board. Potential considerations, and these are examples only, are on deck during heavy weather, during vessel transfers, working over the side, during tender vessel operations, or during single person operations. Existing mandatory wear requirements include National Standard for Commercial Vessel Part G, basic flotation without life raft or dinghy, DCV less than 7.5 metres in B or C waters without level flotation and operating greater than 2 nautical miles from land with a non-float-free EPIRB. Of course, this list of existing mandatory wear requirements isn't exhaustive. There are also requirements including Exemption 41 for unpowered barges and NSCV Part C1, wearing of life jackets when on special purpose or special working decks. You may also have a condition on a certificate or survey or an exemption instrument that requires life jackets to be worn in certain circumstances. For example, a vessel with rail height less than 800 millimetres. For a life jacket wear example, we have a look at a 4.6 metre fishing vessel, which is operating within sheltered water limits and no more than 1 nautical mile from land at any given time. This is a single person operation where the owner is also the master. Although the owner doesn't operate their vessel during bad weather, they've identified through their risk assessment that the possibility of falling overboard is high due to the nature of the work they undertake, leaning over the side to set and retrieve pots. They have also considered their ability to get back into the vessel and that they have no other person to help them if the worst happens and they do go overboard. Based on their risk assessment, the owner includes a short statement in their written procedures that they will wear a PFD automatic inflation style life jacket at all times. They also include that they will wear a personal locator beacon that is registered with AMSA. A real life scenario, Lifejacket aware scenario that occurred earlier this year is from a passenger vessel proceeding on a charter, which was struck by successive large waves while crossing the unpredictable waters of a seaway entrance sandbar. One passenger was thrown overboard, and another suffered injuries on board. The passenger who was thrown overboard became disoriented as they were tossed around in the rough conditions, and within minutes they had swallowed seawater. Fortunately, they were wearing a life jacket, and this kept them afloat and their head above water until they could be rescued 10 minutes later. If the passenger hadn't been wearing a life jacket at the time of the incident, this may have been a different and tragic outcome. To learn more about incidents such as these, please visit the website listed on the slide, which is www.amsa.gov.au/marine incident reporting/monthly safety lessons domestic. This is an example only of what you can include for such hazards as inclement weather and flooding in your risk assessment on, say, a 5-metre vessel, and it's to highlight how you can include life jacket wear. As you can see here, the hazards are inclement weather and flooding. The risks are listed and the controls are put in place, which include life jacket wear. In putting together a procedure for life jacket wear and for during induction, procedures must include the wearing of life jackets. Procedures must include management of life jackets to ensure that they are readily available if needed. And for passenger vessels safety, inductions must include the wearing of life jackets. This graphic is available on the AMSA website, and it's a good way to check if you have covered off the requirements for life jacket wear. In terms of examples of written procedures, we have one here for a life jacket wear procedure, and it says, as identified in the risk assessment, it has been determined that life jackets must be worn by the master and crew in the following situations. During inclement weather, once the sea state reaches a certain height, the master will direct all crew to don life jackets. Life jackets will continue to be worn until otherwise directed by the master. In vessel flooding, should the vessel begin to flood, the master will direct that the flooding emergency procedure be commenced. If flooding cannot be managed, the master will direct all crew to don life jackets. In crew initiative, should a crew member wish to wear a life jacket at any time, they should seek approval from the master. Any request will be looked upon favourably by the master unless there is a legitimate safety reason not to wear a life jacket. This is again an example only of what you could include as part of your overall written procedures. It doesn't have to be long, you just need to ensure it captures when life jackets are to be worn based on your risk assessment. Key onboard operations need to have documented procedures, including how they are reviewed when conditions change. This could include standard operating procedures, for example, operation of tender vessels, crew transfers, use of emergency equipment, etc., checklists or simple procedural statements. Your procedures for key onboard operations procedures must include a risk assessment to demonstrate they are carried out safely. When developing your written procedures, you may want to consider the following. What are your key onboard operations? What level of documentation do you need? What do you expect from your master and crew for each procedure? What will the crew be told in each procedure? For example, health and safety issues, life jackets to be worn, procedure steps, procedural outcomes. If you have an existing risk assessment, you do not need to consult until your next review. This should occur every 12 months and following any incidents. Owners have a responsibility to ensure that the risk assessment, including the appropriate crew determination, is readily available to masters and crew. Owners are also required to give a copy of the risk assessment and appropriate crewing document to the national regulator or a marine inspector upon request. How vessel owners choose to engage with masters and crew will depend on several factors, such as the size of the operation and workforce, multiple vessel locations, and the diversity of operations they undertake. These are examples only, and you may have more ideas that better suit your operation. Communicate directly with masters and crews about your safety management system and seek their input into the risk assessment. This could, for example, be by email or during toolbox meetings. Use of workplace health and safety committees where masters and crew elect their peers to canvass and represent their views on risk assessment to management. The outcomes of these meetings should be recorded and provided to masters and crew. Use of internal newsletters where you outline how and when masters and crew can provide input into reviews of risk assessments. For small vessel operators, you may only have 1 or 2 crew. You may have a less formal process for reviewing the risk assessment. You could record that you have consulted in your vessel log, recording the time, date, purpose of the meeting, for example, risk assessment review, and outcomes and who was there. Vessel owners typically identify risks, including those associated with fire, collision, grounding, and person overboard. But how many operators consider the risks associated with onboard sewage systems and hazardous gases? In February 2019, an incident during a cruise resulted in the tragic death of a 39-year-old passenger who was found in a bathroom on board the vessel. A report from the Office of Transport Safety Investigations later found it was likely the passenger was overcome by a harmful gas called hydrogen sulfide found in sewage systems. The minimum crewing table has been simplified so that it is easy to read and understand. The total minimum crewing figures have not changed. Minimum crewing is the minimum number of crew, including the master, applicable to a vessel based on length using the table you can see on the screen. When operating under minimum crewing, the vessel owner must ensure that the master and each crew member get at least 10 hours rest in every 24-hour period. The 10 hours do not need to be continuous. However, you must ensure that the person has sufficient periods of rest to allow them to recharge before recommencing work. For the purposes of minimum crewing, rest means a period of time when a person is free from all duties and functions. This period can only be interrupted in the case of an emergency. If you intend to operate under minimum crewing but cannot meet the requirements for 10 hours rest within each 24-hour period, then you must undertake an appropriate crewing determination. Guidance for managing crew fatigue can be found at a Managing Crew Fatigue webpage on the AMSA website. In terms of an example of crewing and fatigue considerations, we return to our 4.6 metre fishing vessel, which is operating within sheltered waters no more than 1 nautical mile from land at any given time. The owner/master operates between the hours of 5 AM and 2 PM when fishing and takes into account the time taken to travel to the boat ramp in the morning, processing their catch, and travel home at the end of the day. In total, the owner calculates that they are working for a maximum period of between 11 and 12 hours per day. Based on this, the owner is satisfied that they have sufficient rest and can safely operate with 1 coxswain as per the minimum crewing table. For vessels that are equal to or greater than 80 metres, or equal to or greater than 3,000 gross tonnes, or greater than equal to 3,000 kilowatts in propulsion power, a crewing determination by AMSA must be done every 5 years. This application can be made as part of when applying for a certificate of operation. This crewing determination only applies to a handful of DCVs throughout Australia. So the majority of you listening here today may not need to concern themselves with this. Owners need to ensure that training and drills are carried out at frequencies identified in the risk assessment. Induction training provides new masters and crew with initial training upon joining a vessel that covers safety training, key onboard operations, and emergency procedures. It shouldn't be assumed that just because someone has many years of experience that they know your vessel or operations. This training needs to occur as soon as practical and should ideally occur before the vessel leaves port or within the first day, where possible, of the person joining the vessel. Training and drills in emergency procedures needs to cover off all the elements of your emergency response plan, including mandatory requirements such as fire, collision, person overboard, and master incapacitated. This also needs to include training in the use of the vessel's life-saving equipment such as life rafts, EPIRBs, and life jackets. Within your safety management system, you must keep a record of each crew member's induction training, familiarisation training, and emergency drill participation. This record needs to detail the following information: the name of any person participating, signature of participants, and this can be done as an electronic signature, description of the training undertaken, for example, induction, person overboard drill, use of life raft, etc., and the date training occurred. These records need to be kept for at least 5 years. In terms of what is allowed for an electronic signature, owners must ensure that the electronic signature clearly identifies the participant and confirms that the participant agrees with the contents of the record entry. This may be achieved when the electronic signature is accompanied by a person's name and the date. The method used to sign must be reliable and appropriate. The onus remains on the owner to prove that a participant has signed the record. It is the job of the designated person to support implementation of the vessel safety management system. The designated person's responsibilities are to ensure safe operation of the vessel, monitor and support safety and pollution prevention aspects of vessel operations, and for larger organisations, provide a link between those on board and shore-based management of the organisation. The designated person should also be contactable by crew at all levels working on the vessel and should be able to act upon legitimate concerns. This contact should be appropriate for the operations underway, but not on a 24/7 basis. There is no set rule about who can hold the position of designated person. It will depend on the size of the operator and what tasks it carries out. The role of designated person should not be delegated to people who do not have a continuous overview of vessel operations. For example, casual masters should not be expected to fulfill designated person functions. It is up to the vessel owner to determine if it is reasonably practical to keep a copy of the vessel's SMS on board the vessel. For smaller open vessels, it may not be practicable to keep a paper copy on board. However, you can keep an electronic copy on your phone or iPad, for example. The electronic copy could be on a dedicated SMS app, a PDF version, or you could photograph your SMS. A copy must be always kept on shore, and this copy could also be a paper copy or an electronic version. Both the onboard and onshore version must be the most up-to-date versions. It is a requirement that certain records are kept for a period of 5 years. These records, as mentioned previously, are onboard induction, familiarisation and other training, and logbooks. For the next few slides, we will discuss the recent changes to MA 505, Certificate of Competencies, and how this interacts with the new changes to MA 504. A general purpose hand certificate of competency is required for these deck work and engineering tasks when a person is under general supervision. They are not required for duties associated with fishing. The holder of a GPH certificate of competency, when under direct supervision, may undertake a watch. However, they cannot be in charge of a navigational or cargo watch. There must always be a qualified person who is providing direction and supervision. So a GPH certificate is required for the following tasks when a person is under general supervision. Deck work means operation or lookout tasks for any of the following: navigation, mooring, anchoring or cargo. Engine work means tasks related to main or auxiliary machinery used for propulsion, mooring, anchoring and cargo. For definitions, Our definition of general supervision means that the person being supervised receives instruction and direction on tasks and recurrent personal contact from the supervisor, but is not frequently attended by the supervisor. Direct supervision means that the person being supervised is frequently within sight and hearing of the supervisor. AMSA has in place timelines on what is general and direct supervision. This is left to the owner to determine. Typically, to apply for a new GPH certificate, you need to show evidence of completing a GPH training course at a registered training organisation. However, until the end of 2023, you may meet the eligibility requirements outlined here in option 1 or option 2. For option 1, if you have completed either an element of shipboard safety or hold a certificate of safety training, then if you complete at least 30 days of sea service, performing GPH duties on board a domestic commercial vessel as recorded on an AMSA 771 record of sea service form, you are eligible for a GPH certificate. In option 2, if you've not completed any formal seafarer training, then you need to complete at least 180 days of sea service, performing GPH duties on board a DCV, as recorded on an AMSA 771 record of sea service form, and have a letter from your vessel's owner or master stating that you are competent at the duties identified within the vessel's safety management system. One-day sea service is 8 hours. However, you cannot carry over additional hours on days where you have worked more than 8 hours. For example, if you work 10 hours on a given day, this only counts towards the 1 day, and the extra 2 hours cannot be carried over to another day. There is no restriction on using older sea service on an initial application. These arrangements are only in place for 12 months from 1 January 2023. Applications must be received before 31st of December 2023. To answer a previous question we had on Exemption 38 and coxswain certificates, the holder of an Exemption 38 permit transfers to a coxswain Grade 3 near coastal, and they can undertake the duties of the certificate provided they meet the transitional requirements. Within the coxswain certificate classification, only the holder of a coxswain Grade 1 can undertake the duties of a GPH when under general supervision. The holders of a coxswain Grade 2 or 3 can only work in this capacity when under direct supervision. For more information on this is available on the AMSA website, or you can discuss your circumstances with AMSA Connect on 1800 627 484. Additional information about the changes that we have discussed here today is available at an AMSA website, www.amsa.gov.au, Marine Order 504, Operational Safety Changes. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation, and we hope it provides you with the information you require to operate your vessel safely. If you have any further queries, please refer to the web hub on the previous slide in the first instance. It includes several tabs with information, flowcharts and checklists on the information we have discussed today. If your query is more specific, please phone AMSA Connect on 1800 627 404 and they will be able to either answer your question directly or direct you to a member of AMSA staff who can. Thanks again.